Hello and welcome to Elvenhome as Bachelor's Button hurtles past me pulling the Up Express while Flying Scotsman goes down the other way. Welcome to another edition of Elvenhome and the build of my Engage model layout. In this edition you will see the completion of the work on the church school and the school in its place with all the scenic work done around it. I also reveal the additional building that I suddenly had a brainwave how to build. Also have a look at what was almost a total disaster, which has been averted by the kind efforts and comments from one of my subscribers. So let's not do any more at this part of the video. Let's get on to having a look at the completed build of the school and the final bits of work that I did to do that. Well, here you can see the completed church school. The roofs are now on. All the white edges have been painted in. The coins have all been fitted in on all the corners. If I turn it this way, you'll see that the downpipes and gutters are in all the places, including one that was really tricky to do at the back. This one. I hadn't realised how fiddly trying to fit that in with everything on top would be. The two downpipes here bent to be able to go round and in there. And then again, let's just take the wire of the cable out of the way. At the back as well. And this has come together much quicker than I feared it might. But this you won't see except from the rail side when I buy a new train cam. Which I'll talk about in a different clip. So the next thing to turn my mind to is the boiler house. So I'll have to go away and have a think about the boiler house and then show you me building the boiler house. I don't think that's going to be very difficult, he said, not having a clue how he's going to do it. So in the next clip it will be building the boiler house, and then once that's done we can get this on the layout and I can light it and you can see what it looks like lit up. The next thing for me to do on the layout is to prepare the area where the church school is going to go, and I've already drilled the hole for where the plug is going to go through down through the top board and then further on down to come out underneath the layout. The yellow wire is obviously there to help me guide the plug through, because the tricky bit I think is getting the plug to go through the top and stay straight to go through the hole below. So the wire will just help guide that through. As I mentioned before, this fencing which sits here is going to be carried on around to come up to the bridge, which will also be the barrier essentially between the school on one side and the railway, and the whole of that side of the school is going to be out of bounds so that we don't have children traipsing up and down it. There should be enough room of a pathway that will run along this side, along the side of the chapel, to what will be an area at the back, and I've yet still to make my mind up what that's going to be. So the next piece of work, I've put the cork down, I've drilled the hole, is to get the fencing in and then have a think about what I then need to do. It probably would make sense to ballast around there, but I'm so nervous of ballasting around a double slip. But I'll see. But the first thing, I've definitely got to get the fencing in and probably get a bit of paint down there just to give me a base on which then to do any further scenic work. And then I'll decide how I'm going to scenic up those areas. There's two playgrounds to go in. Obviously, that's far more straightforward, and then have a think about what I put in the far area there and how everything's going to be set out. And that, of course, much depends on the size of the boiler house once I've designed and built that. So what I'll do is I'll come back once I've got this pretty much ready and talk to you about what it is that I've actually done. One of the consequences of changing my design to remove all the fireplaces, because it's going to be heated by pipes that are driven from a coal-fired boiler house, was the need to build a boiler house. And in doing that, I was starting to think about a design. Metcalfe do indeed do a boiler house and chimney, and I've got one on the layout, but if I bring it into shot and put it beside the school, you'll see how big it is. That's for an industrial complex, essentially. Much too big and impressive for what would be needed for a school. Whilst I was working on the layout, I happened to move one of the workshops that come with the engine shed kits. And I thought, ooh, that looks rather good. And as it happens, I have a couple of these over from when I bought the two kits that I turned into one long double road train shed. Now, that's not quite what I want, but it will give me a very good base on which to build. So I'm going to have a go at doing a bit of kit bashing, because if I built that in red brick and stuck it beside this one, it would look rather odd. And it also has this big chimney on for must presumably an internal fireplace, or from a forge, I suppose. Whereas I'm going to need a rather bigger chimney because it's supposed to have a boiler in it. So what I've done so far, if I bring in the open kit, that building is essentially that. And I have a piece of the Metcalfe stone sheet. If I move that back, rather handily, this is exactly the length of the Metcalfe stone sheet, which is rather good. What I'm going to do, and you'll see this when I finish, because I'm not entirely clear in my own mind what the final design will be, is cover this card with this sheet, so I'll have the same look. I think, as you'll know with Metcalfe, these are already scored so that they bend. And plainly, I won't necessarily be able to get the scoring as good as that. I think what I'm likely to do is to cut pieces out that are exactly the right size, and then use the coins, which I've already got painted up, and I think I've probably got enough of those, to put them on the walls to cover the wall edging. I don't want all these windows here, so I should probably just cover that as a single piece, leaving the door, because the door is a nice big bold door, the kind of thing you would have to barrow coal and the like in, and there's an entry door there and these two windows, and I think that may be all. I may keep the window at the back, I'll see. So what I'm going to do is get on with it, and I'll show you, I'll take some pictures as I go along so you can see how I put it together, and I'll show you the finished product once I've completed it. Well, as the rather sensational titles of this clip suggest, I've been saved from myself, essentially, by a comment from a subscriber from what would have been an utter disaster in the build of this incline. David Auger very kindly told me that he was going to be visiting Didcot, and when he did, he would have a look at what was there and pass on any useful information to me. And indeed he did. He confirmed that the head shunt on the other side would hold about 2 to 3 wagons. This is based on the coal stage at Didcot, and that also running underneath the hoppers is a very long ash pit. And I was conscious that I don't have an ash pit on here, and I have lots of steam engines, and the ash has got to go somewhere. So, and as this is on top of the Woodland Scenic sheets, polystyrene sheets, putting an ash pit in there would not be too difficult and would be quite fun to try and model. Those of you who've seen Graham Falston's layout will know on his first lakeside he modelled an ash pit and made a fantastic job of it. And I don't, whether I can do as well as that, I don't know, but I certainly think we could put something in there that would be prototypical for this kind of coal stage. In doing that and looking at that work, it made me put a locomotive on the track, because I was looking at where would the ash pit start and how much clearance is there. And I immediately remembered something which I think I said in the previous video, which is that if the coal stage is sitting on the baseboard, there is not sufficient clearance under the hoppers for a locomotive to pass, which is a bit of a blow. Even if I brought the track this way a little, the hopper would be above the line of the tender would be above the line of the coal, and the coal simply couldn't get in there. So I need to raise this up by about 6 millimeters. The observant among you will already have worked out that if I raise this up 6 millimeters, this incline is going to come 6 millimeters below the aperture that it needs to aim for. So I'm sorry to say, this incline is too shallow and I'll need to completely redo it. That's not a problem. I've already checked that the steeper incline, a Ginty and a couple of wagons can go up. It is quite a stiff incline now, but so is the one at Didcot. So what I'm going to need to do, and the other thing is, as you'll see, I've now put a piece of track in where it will actually be. And in doing that, I've realised that in order not to make this curve here too tight for a locomotive to go round, the coal stage has to go back a little way. So what I'm going to do is to build a brick base on the top here, and that will probably also fill in this space from here to the entry, because what this will do now is come in obviously 6 millimeters higher. Then I can have my flat section, and I'll try and build this into the whole of whatever is going to be sitting there. So that end of it is going to have to go back to the drawing board a bit, though I don't think that's going to be too difficult, he said. But this is rather good because I will then put in a fairly long ash pit here. The entrance to the yard is likely to be around here somewhere, and that will mean there's easy access for vans to take the ash wherever they're going to take it to, because I don't have an ash plant here that can load it into wagons. And I don't want one because they're great big ugly things, and I don't really want it sitting here. And the people in the hotel really don't want to be looking at an ash plant when they get up first thing in the morning. So that's the next bit of work that I've got to go away and do, is completely redo this. It's a bit of a shame, but I know the concept works. It was pretty easy to do, and I just need to change the size of some of the cuts that I made to the shaper sheet, and I've got tons of that and tons of the plaster. So I'll come back once I've redone this, and I'll come back to this part of the scenic work, and I'll also come back once I've built the brick base on which the coal stage will now stand. The first thing that I had to do was to cut a piece of card that was tall enough, and then cut a section to go on half of what will be the back wall, and then it was cut down to size. I then fitted the next, which is the end wall, covering over the window, and then on the inside of the window marked a fan shape at the top and then cut straight down to provide me with card that I could pull through, and the top would fan out to give me the arched top of the window as I wanted. The next thing that I had to do was to make the door, which sits on a wall so that the whole thing sits a bit back from the entrance. I then cut the door entrance with a fan at the top, pulling the cards through and fanning it out to give me an arch top, and then could insert the door piece as you can see here. The far end wall had two windows and a door which needed to be cut back, and here you can see that done. And that then allowed me to assemble the building, bending it and attaching the two halves of the back wall using a piece of card on the inside and another piece of card that you can see which is bracing the corner to hold the whole thing square. I then built a chimney using the Metcalfe approach really of folding a piece of card round and securing it, but without using thick card formers, but a piece of card that attached it, and then attached the chimney on the far end using one of the Metcalfe tops that they use to attach the chimney pots, but cutting a hole in the centre to be able to give me my capping. As you can see there, the roof has a cutout to to allow it to fit around the chimney, and now the coins have gone on, one of the gutters has gone on, and here it is with the downpipe and also having blackened the chimney top, and that's the completed model. Well, here you can see the model now lit up, looking up from the back of the chapel. I decided for the area at the back that after the successful Dig for Victory campaign, what had originally been a lawn, some part was left to vegetables. I'm just moving the gimbal around now to give you a better view. So there's some cauliflowers and cabbages, some red cabbages in there as well, I think, and beans. And you can see the two playgrounds, you can see the boiler house, a little shed, and also a coal stave, which obviously is where the caretaker takes the coal into the boiler house. That's a Pico one, which I've put some ballast on top and stuck to it and then painted black just to give me the look of coal. The area behind the shed, and I may put a smaller shed in there, I'll have a look, is all scrubland, and I've put the bushes down the against the fences. Here you now have a view from the front, so you can see what the chapel looks like lit up, and the school sitting behind. And then as we pan away, you get a much better view of it sitting in situ. Well, I thought I would end this edition of Elvenhome as dusk falls, and you can see that the church and the school are still going strong. I'm really pleased with how that has come out, very, very pleased. The whole thing has come together as I wanted. It has made me think again about the layout of the gasworks. The gas holders, I don't really want them butting right up against the church, but gas holders were in the centre of towns. I used to work in the centre of London, near Horseferry Road, where the town gasworks used to be, which was surrounded by houses and indeed a couple of schools. So it is prototypical, even though it looks a bit odd. I wanted to do this because when I put the lights on at that end of the layout, and I've got the two A3s running with rakes of Gresley coaches, one as teaks and the other as carmine and cream. And as I panned round, there's quite a bit of light going in now to this end of the layout, and indeed at the station, in the fire station and the hotel. There you can see the new incline which has been built. So the next piece of work for me there is to get on and build the base and think how I'm going to construct that so it doesn't look odd. But it did make me think that when I get to there, that's the end of the lights on the layout. I can't light the houses, which really call out for lighting, because they're sitting on the board which has all the point motors and things on it, and I can't be sure what is immediately under them. So if I start drilling through, it is just possible I will drill through some wiring, because there's a lot of wiring obviously underneath there, not all of which was immediately near the point motors because I couldn't fit it all in. So the only place that I thought I could add lighting to was up at the vicarage end. And what I'll do now is I'll just reposition the camera and talk you through the work that I did there before we end the video. Well, this is an end of the layout that I haven't spent a lot of time showing for a good while. It's well over a year now since this was completed. In fact, I think it's almost 2 years since it was completed. Good gracious. Yes, it would be. This had no lighting on it at all, other than the lighting in the church. But the way in which the lighting was fixed underneath, I'd thought for a while it wouldn't be too difficult to put some street lights in at least. And so I bought some street lights from layoutsforyou.com, which I'm very pleased with, and I put them in, and it really has added, and I like the way that there are pools of light under each of the lamps, falling to darkness before the next lamp kicks in. So the parishioners of St Eldar can now get to and from the station without having to negotiate their way in pitch black. On the whole, it was fairly straightforward to do. You had to be a bit careful because when all of this comes off the layout, it's unprotected, of course, on most of its sides. And all things considered, one gravestone, one little bench fell off. I snapped a tree, this tree, So it went back in as a much shorter tree, and actually I think it probably looks a bit better. So that wasn't all too bad. The only thing that was a pain was that when I was drilling a hole for this lamp here, the drill bit caught the fence and wrapped it round the fence. So I'm waiting for PD Models to have these back in stock, and then I'll replace that. If they don't come back into stock, I have, let me put some lights on because you'll be able to see that better. You don't need pitch black now. There we go. I have more of this type of fencing that was used for the vicarage, more than enough to replace all of these if I have to do that, so that it's similar. But I could always put it down to bomb damage and just stick in a different sort of railing because that's all they had. But I'm really pleased with those lights, and I think it's really added to the end of this part of the layout. So that just about wraps up for this edition of Elvenhome. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the completion of the work on the church school and its and the scenic works around it. I've had great fun doing that, and it's come together, as I said, very much quicker than I feared it might. If you have any comments, of course, please do leave comments. I always say they're just so helpful, and the whole school area and some of the things that have gone on down there are entirely through things that people said to me. So please do let me have your comments. One thing, if you are commenting and you put in any kind of web link or hyperlink, YouTube thinks that those are spam, so it sticks it in the review folder, and it may be a day or two before I realise something is there. But I do promise I look at everything to make sure that people haven't been wrongly considered to be up to no good. If you've liked the video, please do give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe and click the subscribe bell, or the bell beside the subscribe button, so you know when I'm uploading. But until I speak to you again in about a couple of weeks' time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.